I just want to say is that even before this COVID crisis, our education system has been failing about 263 million children who were still out of school. And this is not counting the over 130 million children who, after 4 years of schooling, did not know how to read and write. There are real issues in our education system even before COVID actually hit us. This crisis, in my mind, has just revealed some of the core issues in our system that require even more thinking. It's almost as though the wave has come in and now just cleaned up everything, and we can see more clearly what exists and what does not exist. And I just want to share some of those things that I think this crisis has revealed. I think the first and the most obvious one is that our system is not resilient. There is one model of schooling, and there's almost no alternatives to that. So when the crisis hit us, we were, as you said, just not prepared. Because we've never imagined learning where there is not a physical school that students come to for 8 hours a day and sit for an exam at the end of it. We've just never imagined a kind of learning system that looks completely different from that. And this is one of the biggest reasons that even before the crisis hit, so many of our students were out of school. Online schools and e-learning was such a small part of our system. But today, imagine, thank God that it existed, because if we did not have that alternative, we would really not know what to do. Imagine now if we had 10 such other alternatives like online schooling to our normal conventional physical schools. How much could we have done with that, and how well could we have responded to this crisis? So I think the first thing that's revealed to us is just a lack of resilience. And then the second thing that this crisis has really revealed is that we have a teacher-led model, and that is our core offering. So we've been talking about having home and school connections, parents and communities being involved in learning. We've also been talking about student-led learning, student agency for a long time now, but those are just words. I think the biggest thing we've realized is when the teacher is not standing in front of the classroom and leading the learning is not happening. So it is a big reality call that needs to be rethought of and really reacted on. And I think finally, my big realization was that technology is just not mainstream. We've been talking about EdTech for a while, but over 70% of the 1.5 billion children who are out of school today do not have broadband internet connectivity. And more than that, teachers don't even know how to teach with this technology. Parents and students don't know how to use it to learn. So technology is just not as common as we thought it was, and it's just not as much of a force as we thought it was. So there is a core need for innovation today because there are no options. We have nothing else. But the good news is, because there are no options, there's also no fear. We have only one way to go from here, that is to help our children learn. So everything we try, every experiment we do will be a step forward in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that's very important to note here, Janvi. The only place for us to go is up, and perhaps we have no choice but to, for those millions of children we've promised education to. Which brings me to the next question that some of our participants had, which looks into the section of children or communities that have access to technology. How do we define online learning versus online schooling and improve it in the short term for those who have access to technology? How do we create certain strategies to humanize this form of learning itself?
Yeah. And this is, of course, where a large part of our focus is today. I really think that I'm not going to get into discussing the question of technology that much, but more the model. E-learning content exists, LMS platforms exist today. There's a lot of really good content. There's a lot of really good platforms that are focusing on engaging, educational, gamified learning. My department itself had curated a list of free and vetted e-learning resources. These are available in 8 languages, and just this list is over 100 resources. So there's a lot of content out there, and there's a lot of platforms out there. There are also some really good platforms which are also have fully functional offline capabilities like Ustad or Colibri. So I think there's a lot in this space that is already been done. So I'm not going to spend too much time discussing that. But what I really wanted to focus on is talk about how we should use this time to not replicate normal school online, but to try something different, because this is our chance to. So the first thing I want to say in that is there was a recent study that came out जिसमें ये था कि 60% of our students internationally find school boring. Now imagine if we take the same students and put them in front of a computer where they're not even seeing their peers or their teachers, but they're meant to focus just looking at a screen for a few hours a day. And when they have the ability to, by the way, switch it off and walk away and there's no classroom management. Imagine how boring that would be. So let's not make online schooling about just shifting the way teachers taught offline to the exact same model online. Instead, let's actually really think about what we've learned about online schooling and e-learning, which is that this is a way to actually help students go at their own pace, personalize learning, and to work with their own learning preferences. What I mean by that is, if there's a student who learns better by reading, if there's another student who learns better by videos, if there's another student who is more of a kinesthetic learner, let's actually use this chance for all these students to learn content by themselves through all these different platforms and different means and methods. Let's use the teacher time with the student to answer questions, to have discussions, to extend their learning. So when the teacher is actually on screen with the child, it's an interactive session, which is bringing a lot of value and a value add to the child's learning process. But let them do their learning on using all of these other things that we already have in place. I think the second thing to say on that is, I definitely think we've overcorrected on how much online and technology exposure that our learners have. And this was, of course, an emergency reaction to the COVID crisis, and perhaps now it's time to roll that back. On average, children around the world are spending over 8 hours a day on online learning and staring at a screen. That's not okay. This is not okay for their mental health. This is not okay for their well-being. And this is not okay absolutely to humanize learning. So can we really use this time to make learning relevant with projects and activities that teach students basic life skills, and also do this from an off-technology perspective, where there's interaction with family members and other people who are in their home environments? I'll talk later about our project-based learning bank, but I think tools like this can be leveraged to really push on that offline and off-technology learning component, which is still a really important part of learning. I think the next thing on online learning just to talk about is the relationship between the teachers and the parents and how little that's been explored. Today, parents are either overstretched and overstressed out because काम भी है और बच्चों को भी देखना है, and they're very stressed out कि बच्चे पीछे नहीं रह जाए, or they don't have the capability because they have jobs or other things to actually help their kids with learning. And our teachers are trying to deal with both of these. So we really need to help the teachers in understanding how to manage these different situations and how to help students who are coming from both of these different areas. So on this, actually, our department's trying to put together something we're calling a virtual teacher toolkit, which is essentially teacher-driven questions which other teachers who've been teaching online are answering, so that we really, really understand how to best teach online and how to manage these very different situations in each home. Finally, I think also on this humanization point, I would say that there's a big part of learning that we're unfortunately losing out because of this COVID-enforced closures, which is peer and social connections. It's such a big part of learning. हम लोग सबको याद है हमारे दोस्त कैसे थे स्कूल में, and हम अपने दोस्तों से कितना सीखे हैं. So this is a really hard problem to solve, but luckily today there are some technologies which are actually focusing on that. So technologies like Cohort are creating group-based challenges and competitions so students can work together. There are other platforms where students can actually collaborate on projects. So I think even if it is virtual connections, let's push that. Let's talk about physical distancing, but maybe social connectivity using online schooling. And that's what I would push for really when we think about online schooling.
Thank you, Janvi, for elaborating all of those strategies for online schooling and learning. I would like to reiterate that if any participant has questions for Janvi, they could ask them in the chat room, and we can delve deeper into some of these strategies that Janvi has talked about, towards the end. Let me divert you now, Janvi, to look at the more vulnerable communities, the ones with no or low tech access and connectivity, or where there is low parental literacy, which can be an impediment to learning for a child itself. So, what can we do for them in today's situation?
Deepika, thank you. That's the hardest question that we're really all trying to answer. And the reality is we don't have answers. So we're all trying new things. And what I can share with you is just some of our very early learnings from the new things that we are trying. But really put out a call to everyone on this webinar to say, please try more and try differently, and then share with everyone else what is working and what's not, because this is all new and uncharted territory for all of us. I think the first thing to say about the vulnerable communities is just how do we reach them? This is the biggest challenge, right? Everyone's asking this. जिन बच्चों के computers है, internet है, at least we know how to connect with them every day. But how do we even connect with these children? So one of the things that our department is doing is putting together a manual with case studies from around the world with a few best practices on how different people are using and trying to connect and what that looks like. And let me give you a few examples about some of the things that we've learned, because it's all emerging. So first, let me talk about radio. One organization who we've captured, whose work we've captured in Pakistan, works predominantly with radios in the Baluchi and Afghani communities near the borders. What they have shared with us in terms of best practices is using storytelling as a technique. So very often we think of radio and we just go back to instructions on radio. And what they've been doing is really saying, आप instructions मत दो, आप कहानियों में समझाओ बच्चों को कि what they have to do, how they have to do it, get them interested, get them engaged, let them want to listen to the radio. So imagine the most interesting things that you listen to on radio, whether they're cricket commentaries or their stories, they all have a format where it's unfolding slowly, and you're building up to something. So how can we use radio more for that sort of a format of storytelling? In addition to that, they've actually been doing interactive sessions, which is also very interesting. So, for example, in interactive sessions, they give students riddles. कभी-कभी उनको speaking games बता देते हैं. कुछ activities उनको करना पड़ता है at the same time. So what ends up happening is that when we speak to the students, they feel like almost like it's a part of a conversation as opposed to just a one-way medium where the radio is just saying something and they're just listening, which is boring. Let me maybe now talk about SMS. One of the biggest things that we have seen with SMS-based connectivity is that SMS-based connectivity and technology only works when it is added to the textbook or added to some other resources. Apne aap, it's not very effective in terms of pushing learning. So what that means is essentially we ask learners to read a chapter or work on something on their in their textbooks or through any resource material that they might have at home. And then what we do is use those SMSs to give them activities based on the chapter that they read or the learning that they had, and really kind of push that learning and make them think more about it and think more deeply about it. Let me now maybe talk about WhatsApp and phone calls. So one of the things that we learned was that WhatsApp usually goes very well when it's connected to phone calls. So when the two of them go together. So what we've seen really works is that having separate sessions for teacher-led instructions and separate sessions for student participation. So what I mean by that is हर session में teacher सिर्फ instruction दे रही है तो बच्चे engage नहीं होते learning में. So instead of that, have a few sessions where teachers are giving instructions or explaining content. but designate separate sessions where students get to ask questions, where they get to interact with each other, where they get to maybe push their learning or tell you something that they've noticed which was interesting or different, so that they also feel like this is not a one-way street. And finally, I mean, I think, let me just say some other interesting things that we have learned in this connectivity perspective. So one very interesting example was in Kenya, where a lot of students had phones, but data nahi tha phone pe, or they had some sort of device, but there was no data or connectivity. So what the NGO did was essentially they used buses, and the bus was a mobile hotspot. So the school bus, which was a mobile hotspot, went to a very crowded, congested kind of area jahan pe bacche rehte the, and it was there for about half an hour. And in that half an hour, all the learning materials that they wanted to was pushed into all these student devices. So the students had all of this learning material, and then the bus moved on. It's a fairly low-cost solution, and it really helps disseminate content. I mean, another one, which is, of course, in the worst case scenario, when the students have zero technology, kuch bhi nahi hai, phone bhi nahi hai, radio bhi nahi hai, kuch nahi hai. In those situations, we learned from one of our partners here in Doha itself that they're using physical work packs. So they're creating worksheets and workbooks, and these are being given to the students in their home. They're delivered, wo bahar rehte hain, they stays in the sun for a certain amount of time, jab tak ki the virus is basically not an issue, and then the students pick it up and then they use it. Or फिर collect hota hai, the same thing happens on the teacher's side, where it's left in the sun for a while, and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit of a few stories about how people are doing it. And really, if in this group anyone has any interesting stories or any interesting experiments that they've been doing on connectivity, please share it with us, and we'll capture it in the manual and we'll share it more broadly, because this is the need of the hour. We really need as many solutions and best practices as we can get. Maybe then moving on to sort of, now that we have figured out maybe how to connect with the student, what to connect with the student on. So, what sort of educational materials can we use? And here my push would be to say, let's try and find educational materials which are designed for no technology, low resources, and low parental literacy. So I'll talk about the work that we've been doing in this. Our department has designed a bank of educational projects and learning resources, which is available for free online. The focus was on project-based learning, because in this case, we need the students to take the lead and the ownership in their learning. Now, research tells us that student-led autonomy works best जब projects होते हैं. Because students एक ही concept पे extended period of time के लिए काम करते हैं, like for at least a week. They build on their knowledge day by day with one activity after another. And so they actually take ownership in getting engaged in that activity. And at the end of it, उनका कुछ outcome होता है. So they also enjoy working towards that outcome and having something that they've finished or completed, or a sense of achievement जब ये project खत्म होता है. So the project bank is essentially that we have up is for different age groups. It's for students from 4 years to 14 years. It's linked to what we expect in the curriculum standards for these learners at this age. They're designed for zero technology homes and for very low resources. तो आपके घर में अगर कैंची, पेन, पेंसिल, कागज है, तो that's probably enough. They're also designed, at least for the older age groups, to have lower parental supervision. So what I mean by that is parents are not necessarily required to definitely be educators. And as long as they're sort of supporting and engaged with the children, that's more than enough. So I'll give you a few examples. किस तरह के projects होते हैं. So for example, एक है कि आप अपना खुद का comic book बनाओ. तो इसमें बच्चे शेप्स के बारे में भी सीखते हैं, लिटरेसी के बारे में भी सीखते हैं, आर्ट भी करते थोड़ा बहुत. दे थिंक अबाउट देयर ओन स्टोरी, और उसको किस तरह से लिखा जाए, सुनाया जाए. दे थिंक अबाउट कैरेक्टराइजेशन एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट, एंड एट द एंड ऑफ इट दे हैव अ रियली फन कॉमिक बुक जो उन्होंने खुद बनाया है. Another project, for example, is a pop-up restaurant. तो बच्चे सोचते हैं कि किस तरह का वो रेस्टोरेंट अपने घर में खोल सकते हैं. So they think about ingredients, they think about recipes, वो लिखते हैं, तो there's a bit of literacy involved in that. Step by step लिखना recipe is a very good scientific skill to have. And then they also think about prices of the ingredients, pricing strategy, कितना charge किया जाए, profit margin क्या होता है. So they learn a little bit of math and business sense through this as well. And end में एक meal हो जाता है. They sit together with their family and they have a meal, and that's of course a fun experiment. Another project, for example, is making your own music. तो इस project में they learn a lot of science concepts, sound waves कैसे होते हैं, echo क्या होता है, what is vibrations, how does sound travel through different mediums. But then they write their own song, and so they learn a little bit about poetry and rhyme and so on. And then they sing their song for their own family. So, it becomes a really fun activity that they do in the end. But pure hafte they do a series of experiments to learn about sound. So there are lots of projects like this, and हम और भी develop कर रहे हैं हर हफ्ते. अभी सिर्फ इंग्लिश में है, पर थोड़े दिनों में अरबिक और फ्रेंच में भी आ जाएगा. So please feel free to use this or share this as you wish. But I also know that other organizations, for example, Mantra also has been developing and doing their own activity banks. And these are all designed for low-tech homes. So I think in terms of resources, my only sort of push is to say, let's use resources which are specifically designed for these contexts, because there's a lot of learning that can happen with that, and it can be very engaging. And honestly, students can take the lead and really enjoy this creativity that we give them. And one of the things we're learning from the projects which we've been piloting right now is that students बोल रहे हैं कि हम लोग को पहले कभी मौका ही नहीं मिला खुद का सोचने का और अपने आइडियाज इस तरह करने के, बिकॉज पहले हमेशा टीचर हमको एग्जैक्टली बताती थी कि ऐसे 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 करना है. So it's been a very rewarding process for the projects. And I think finally on the vulnerable communities, I think just thinking about how we work with families is the big question, because unlike in high income homes, families may not have that same level of literacy. They may not all be school or college graduates. And frankly also families might be busy. आपको काम है तो मुश्किल हो जाती है to also sit with the children all day. But यहाँ पे I would just say that I don't think we should write off these families. I don't think we should say कि because they're not literate वो कुछ नहीं कर पाएंगे. I think there's a lot that families can do, and I think it's just about designing and defining the roles. Let the teacher be the person who focuses on the subject content and the learning materials. But let the parent be the person who is a partner with the student on this learning journey. So most parents can help learners when they convert math to making household budgets. वो अपने घर में तो budgets करते ही हैं. Most parents can also think about literacy when they tell their children stories, folk stories, पुराने दिन की कहानी, अपने बचपन की कहानियाँ. So I think we can use families and parents to be a partner with the child on the learning journey, and I think it's just about being creative about how we do that. And that would be my kind of provocation around really rethinking this role of the parent.
Thank you so much, Janvi. I must tell you that there are a lot of requests for you to share these resources and links with the participants here on the webinar. And I would like to inform all of you that post this webinar, we will be sending an email with the recording of this webinar, the PPT that you're all seeing, and also the resources that Janvi has mentioned. We will be sharing all of these links with you. And there are also some requests to share their own experiences with respect to how they're tackling the current scenario. I would like to request you all to maybe wait till the end of the webinar when we open it for Q&A, and we'll be able to give you the opportunity to share these experiences with Janvi as well and the rest of the group.
I really enjoyed that.
Your excitement towards all of these resources that Janvi has been talking about. And I think encouraging activity-based learning is amazing, and we all know the virtues of this itself. And while there are a lot of activity-based learning modules being created across the state here in India, we would also probably like to know how could one track a child's performance through method of activity-based learning?
Yeah.
Could also shed a little light on that.
Sure. So this is also a big question for us in terms of how do we track performance. And I think what we thought about is, let's go back to the basics of what assessments are for and about. Actually, आजकल हम लोग सोचने लगे कि assessments are these big end of term exam. You know, we have to catch the student off guard कि उसने क्या नहीं सीखा. But actually, assessments are about just seeing what learning is happening and trying to ensure that as much learning as possible can happen. So instead of thinking about it as a big scary thing that we want to catch the student and see how much उसने नहीं पढ़ाई की, why not think of it as a देखते हैं कि आपने कितनी पढ़ाई की. You know, let's just flip the lens a little bit. So one of the things that we've been doing is trying to actually build student capacity to do self-led assessment as well as parental input in terms of assessment, and then also teacher input. So if you think about project-based learning, one of the big things that it has always pushed is this idea of reflection. What worked, what didn't work, kyun nahi, and for students themselves to think about it and reflect very deeply on their own learning. This self-reflection is something that we are adding to each project also that we're developing, but I would actually really provoke for everybody on this webinar to think about. So if students at the end of it developed a song, or they developed a poster trying to convince parents कि plastic usage कम करना चाहिए, then to actually think about, okay, which parent was convinced, why not, मैं और क्या कर सकती थी to have convinced more people, मैंने क्या किया जिसके साथ मेरी माँ convinced हो गई. So to really think deeply and reflect about why and how things are happening so that they themselves are thinking about what they missed in their learning and what they can do differently the next time around. From a parent perspective, bringing parents into the assessment is also very interesting to track and monitor, because parents also notice things which are very important for student learning but often neglected. So for example, a parent can tell you that, and I can speak from my own experience of my own two children, that when I see my daughter work really hard on something and बार बार उसको नहीं आ रहा है फिर भी वो कोशिश कर रही है, that is really rewarding. And that is something that a parent can tell you. She really didn't get it, but she really tried. Effort tha. So the teacher is not just seeing the end product and saying good or bad, but she's also trying to understand the journey and whether this truly fits in that student's challenge zone. Is it too challenging? Was it something that the student got interested in? Did they try hard? What was the effort? What worked? What didn't? And I think parents can be used also as a support in this mechanism to, one, understand and reward and recognize effort, reward and recognize energy, knowledge, and also, you know, support the assessment journey. And then there's, of course, a final part of it, which is for the teachers to know what the students actually did. And not only from a point of tracking what the student did, but also from a point of supporting them if they didn't get something. And here, what we've been doing is sort of, one, encouraging wherever possible for students to share their work with teachers if there is WhatsApp or any other medium available. But the second is, as we mentioned earlier, supporting the teachers, which is having conversations with the students. So even if students can articulate कि मैम ऐसा हुआ था, मैं न्यूज़पेपर प्रोजेक्ट कर रही थी और उसमें मैंने ये किया और ये हुआ, ये नहीं हुआ, the teacher knows how much the student has done or not done. So tracking their actual work is not impossible. And you can always ask them to keep the projects as a portfolio so that when they do come back to school, hopefully after a few months, you can look at that portfolio and reflect on it. But this also reduces the amount of stress on students and parents and teachers and actually focuses on learning as opposed to compliance. कि हो गया कि नहीं, check हुआ कि नहीं, itna kiya ki nahi. And so, you know, it makes the learning journey a little bit more fun.
I think you're absolutely right there, Janvi. I mean, elements like reflection and support must take precedence over the completion of the activities itself or the learning itself. And I think that's one of the many cornerstones to enabling learning at this point of time for our children. I would like to divert you to the elephant in the room here, which is, what are we going to do in the medium term if things get back to normal, and normal in air quotes, and our children are back in schools post COVID-19? Isn't it something we need to equally prepare for? How do we get children back on track once they're back in schools?
Yeah, that is truly the elephant in the room. And to be honest, that's the really worrying aspect of this learning. I think the question here is just, when kids come back to school, just like after every long summer holiday, there will be some children who are more behind. And when I say behind, I use this word very loosely because this is not a race. But unfortunately, because of the way our school system is designed, we have to go at a certain pace, नहीं तो आप पीछे रह जाते हैं. And ये बहुत डर लगा रहता है हमें कि हमारे बच्चे पीछे नहीं रह जाए. But after every break, there is something called a summer learning slide or summer learning loss, which happens across the world. And in some homes where children are lucky to have parents will focus a lot on reading and math, they stay on track, and in some other homes they don't. And I think the big focus will need to be on catch up and remedial learning. And I think this actually might be a great opportunity for us, because as it is in India, this is a huge problem. I'm sure everyone on this call knows, but जो असर टेस्ट के डेटा से पता चला है is that 1 in 2 students in grade 3 is behind in math, and 1 in 3 students in grade 3 is behind in literacy. And the very worrying thing is that these are foundational skills. It's not so important if they remember that content or not, because today in a world of internet and Google, today in a world where they can catch up on the knowledge part of it, what they cannot catch up is on the skills part of it. And if they fall too behind on the skills element, it'll be impossible for them to learn anything in school. So imagine a child who cannot read sitting in a grade 4 classroom and trying to study. How is he going to even understand what the teacher is asking him to do? So I think the focus needs to be on catching up on skills. Content ho jayega baad mein. And one of my ideas, and of course this is not something I've explored, but I think could be worth leveraging, is this huge tuition industry and coaching classes industry that a country like India already has. How do we leverage how they do things and create real coaching and tuition support, so that we are really helping our learners catch up and be able to move forward as fast with all of these foundational skills? I really think that will be where the medium-term focus lies.
Thank you, Janvi. I think remedial learning has always been on the top of our minds. And probably now is a good time to go back to it, re-strategize, rebrand the whole concept of remedial learning itself, if we want to, continue to engage our children once they're back to school. One of the popular questions among our participants was, will the post-COVID situation make the role of teachers obsolete in the near future? And if not, what would be the top 3 challenges for teachers post-COVID-19?
That's a tough question to ask. So I want to start with saying, I think, in fact, the COVID crisis is going to make the role of the teacher even more important. But I want to use an analogy when I talk about what I think the biggest change in the role of the teacher, I hope, will be. And that is from the medical profession, actually. So if you look at the medical profession, let me compare the doctor to the teacher. But जब आप hospital जाते हैं, तो पहले आप किसी से मिलते हैं जो आपका check-in करता है. Then you have somebody else who takes your temperature, who takes your blood pressure, जो nurse होती है. Then you meet the doctor and you explain to him what's happening, and he gives you a diagnosis, and he inspects you, and he checks you, and he supports you. And then you go to a pharmacist जो आपको दवाई देते हैं. अब education में क्या होता है, that there is one person who is a teacher who is expected to do everything. So from bus duty to supervise the classroom, to talk to the parents, to plan the learning, to deliver the lecture, to give feedback, to check homework, सब कुछ teacher करती है. And this is where I think a big part of our bottleneck is, because teachers are expected to be amazing storytellers. So when they come into the classroom and they give a lecture, everybody should be listening. They are expected to be really, really thoughtful, compassionate counselors. So जब बच्चा फंस जाता है कहीं पे, उसको कुछ समझ में नहीं आता है, when he's stuck, the teacher should be able to help him get unstuck and support him. The teachers are expected to be very creative and also subject matter experts. So they can design new ways to teach the same curriculum, and they can have different ways to understand and answer every question that the child might have. But at the same time, teachers expect to be very disciplined, very organized, so that they can monitor the children during lunch hour. They can give punishments when the child is not listening. They're also meant to be very good communicators, so that they can talk to the parents when the parents come for PTA. ये नहीं होता है. There are very few teachers in the world who can do all of this and do it very well. And that, I think, is part of our issue. So in my hope actually is that what this crisis will help us understand is that there's a very important role that teachers play. And in many ways, that role need not be babysitting the child, because we can find other people to help us with that role. And we can find other people to bring the community in to also support the learning journey. So I'm hoping that this crisis will help us actually reimagine this role of a teacher, to really focus it on the things that only she can do, which is planning learning, which is helping students when they're stuck, and which is giving feedback. These are things that nobody else can do but the teacher. And I'm really hoping that we're able to distribute the other roles to technology, to peer groups, to self-led learning, and of course to communities and parents and so on. But I also think this is going to be a huge challenge for teachers when they come out of it, because in many ways students will have seen their friends after so long, and it'll be a hard time to keep them engaged in learning. They've also lost their habit of learning. The second thing is they've gotten used to very personalized attention for those who've had personalized attention from parents. So to try and replicate that in a classroom setting is going to be a real challenge. And of course, there's a question of catch up and students being at different levels. And this is why I'm hoping that the first thing I said will be true, because I think there'll be a lot of additional pressure on teachers, which is why I'm really hoping that we can help her focus her role to manage all this additional pressure and take away things from her role which are not necessary for her to do.
Thank you, Janvi. I think to summarize your points, innovation, support, motivation, inspiration, these are all synonyms for teachers itself. And as long as it holds good here, I don't think teachers would ever go obsolete in our current reality. And I think it's a note to all of us who work with teachers also, that once our children are back in schools, and we know quite evidently that teachers are going to be faced with a lot of challenges, I think it's a good time for us to also revisit some of those strategies for classroom management, for teacher motivation itself, and really work with a lot of focus on that front. On that note, Janvi, I would like to come to an uncomfortable scenario, which is if the COVID-19 is not solved. Yeah. How do we build resilience in our education system to ensure continuous learning for every child?
Yeah, and this is a hard question, but I'm going to say whether COVID-19 is solved or not, it's time to have alternatives to school. It's time to design different types of schools and different types of learning, and switch from one model. If we have so many different types of learners in this world, why should we have only one model of school? It doesn't make sense. So I think this is time to really explore that. And luckily, as we've discussed, because the fear is not a compelling factor, and we have the chance to innovate, maybe it's time to. So maybe I want to talk about a model that we've been trying, which is a hybrid learning model called the Digital School Program model. This is essentially a model which is a flexible learning model for personalized and accelerated learning. So we're trying to pilot it with 2,000 adolescent girls who are between the ages of 13 and 20 साल के, सीतापुर में, India में. और ये मॉडल अभी भी चल रहा है जबकि सब स्कूल्स बंद हैं. So the main problem was कि ये जो लड़कियां थी वो स्कूल नहीं जा पा रही थी, and many of them were really far behind in their learning. So a lot of them, even though they were grade 5 or grade 7 dropouts, could not read or write. तो अब स्कूल जा ही नहीं पा रहे थे. A lot of them couldn't go क्योंकि स्कूल बहुत दूर पड़ रहा था. So and a lot of them couldn't go क्योंकि दूसरी कोई नौकरी थी या घर पे काम था or whatever it was. So this model of going to school from 7 to 2 was just not working for them, so they dropped out. So what we did is we essentially created this model where students learn in groups, in peer groups, in their own village, and they learn using technology and projects. They in their villages have coaches or community mentors who help them with their learning. So they help themselves, their peer groups help each other, and then these community mentors and coaches help them. They have teachers, of course, and they connect with the teacher at least twice a week. Once they visit the teacher, once the teacher visits them. So itna travel nahi hona padta hai. So really what this model helped us do is it reduced the need and the ability to travel to school and be there for specific hours. It also started at the level that the student was. So agar unko likhna padhna bhi nahi aata tha, it started from there. But then it went very quickly and accelerated through the curriculum so that they could catch up faster, because obviously they cannot study forever. So we gave them about 18 months to get ready for the grade 10 open school, national open school exam. But the other thing that this model also did is, to your point of teachers earlier, it really specialized the role of the teacher and distributed her tasks between this peer group, the community mentors, and technology itself. So they essentially focus on just student learning and helping the students get forward and planning the learning. Now, this model was designed in India, and of course, it's now being tried in 2 other parts of the world as well. But at the end of this model, we're hoping that these girls are ready to give the 10th grade National Open exam and then actually get a high school diploma certificate. And what's really exciting is, अब जबकि पूरे यूपी में सब स्कूल्स बंद है और पूरे सीतापुर के एरिया में सब स्कूल्स बंद है, ये मॉडल चल रहा है अभी भी, and the girls are still learning and they're still engaged, and you can see a photograph actually of them on the screen. ये दो बहनों की photograph है, तो they're in their same home and they're learning. So I think that with the DSP, what we've been really thinking about is how to create different systems of learning for different types of learners, because their situations are different, their contexts are different. So this one school model is just not working. And if COVID is not solved and or our world and our reality looks very different, we will really have to think about these other models of learning and how they can become mainstream. And पूरी दुनिया में ये हो रहा है. There are small pockets of people trying different, very different models. But how do we just really expand on that would be my provocation. Another really interesting model, for example, is a Maori school model, which is happening in New Zealand, जहाँ पे they work with वहाँ के आदिवासी और tribal populations, and उनके साथ they've created a community and community kind of school where they learn with their grandparents and their parents some of the skills, but they also learn literacy and numeracy. Now, this is another model where they are learning within their own communities. इस तरह के बहुत सारे models बहुत 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 छोटे skills पे किए जा रहे हैं, and really we have to kind of accelerate that. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Janvi, for fielding that question. It's already 7 o'clock, almost 7 o'clock. So I'm going to quickly jump to the audience questions right now. So our first question is from, I'm not very sure of what's his name, just says Administrator 1. The question is, do you think we can use the COVID crisis positively, use the crisis to influence our governments to use the models that you are spearheading for a rapid rollout?
Yes. that is the optimist in me saying, हाँ बिल्कुल कर सकते हैं. We are actually just to tell you that maybe till 4 weeks ago, Qatar, which is where I live today, यहाँ पे they would not recognize online schooling, and today the full country is learning online. So I think governments are being forced to change their way of thinking and how they look at things and accept things. there are parts of the world where governments are leaving this whole curriculum progress and just, trying to say, as long as they're learning and they're learning up to all of this, it's okay. They don't have to learn with these textbooks in this way. So I think this is actually a really good time in some ways, because they are realizing that some of the strategies that they've been pushing are not working, and it could be time for them to rethink the way they're doing it. And I think the way to do this really is to give governments alternatives. क्योंकि आज क्या हो रहा है कि even the governments are feeling very trapped. They don't know themselves know what to do and how to do it. So actually sharing with them options to say, इस तरह से किया जा सकता है, उस तरह से किया जा सकता है. The governments are looking for these ideas and these options. So if we share with them options of interesting things that we're doing, I feel like it's going to tip them in the right direction as well. Because as I said in the beginning, I think the fear has gone away, because there is nothing, we are living our worst nightmare. So there is nothing else to be afraid of now.
Thank you, Janvi. I'd just like to reiterate that Administrator 1 is Mr. Manoj Maheshwari himself. Thank you, sir, for asking the question. And I hope your question was answered as well. Coming to our next question, it's from Devanshu, who heads an organization called Involve, which works very closely on the peer learning model itself. His question is, how can we use the models of peer learning or teaching at scale using technology while there is a limited access of it for parents from low-income communities?
Yeah, so this is honestly, using peer learning is a tough one when there is physical distancing. There are, of course, technologies, like I mentioned before, which are designed for peer learning. And perhaps one way is to actually adopt those kinds of technologies and try and help learners get onto that, to also feel connected to their friends. But at the moment, most of these technologies are just serving to help learners feel more connected, not necessarily to promote peer learning. But one small way is, doing peer review of work. One thing to just kind of share is what's happening in some parts of the world is there are small communities which are opening up. And within the community, children are being allowed to interact with each other, even though they're not allowed to leave that community. So the minute the students are allowed to do that within their communities, there's a lot we can do around peer learning. And this is sort of building off that model that I was previously telling you, the Just School program, where we are combining different levels of learners in groups. And then these learners are essentially pushing and promoting each other to learn and helping each other. They help to keep the motivation up. They help to actually answer each other's questions. And that's been really, really a very powerful tool. In fact, we've seen in many cases that this one laptop and one device per child is actually not effective. But when they're sharing a device or laptop, has been more effective, because then they actually form a little bit of a community of support, which is especially very, very useful for girls. So those are just some things that we maybe want to think about as the crisis and COVID crisis sort of lives slowly, and these communities and peer groups are starting to be able to meet each other.
Thank you, Janvi. Devanshu, I hope that answers your question. Moving on to the next question, this is in relation to the earlier point that you were making on certain non-traditional ways, to engage students. Dr. Manish Chandra has this question: will these non-traditional ways be effective? Because school does not just provide knowledge, but among other things, it also imparts discipline among students.
Yeah. And this is true. So we have to think about the different obvious as well as tacit learnings that students get from school. And one of them is definitely discipline. I actually feel like discipline is not one that we should be worried about, because in a lot of the non-traditional learning that I talked about, where it's student-led, students have to be even more disciplined to finish it themselves without someone forcing them to, or there being a requirement to. So it actually helps students with their own time management, and it helps students with their own motivation and engagement and seeing tasks through. what I worry about more is sort of the learning that comes, as we mentioned before, from groups and communities, and that tacit learning that's happening everywhere around in schools. And I think that one is the one that we all have to innovate against, how to create in these situations. And I definitely hope that as communities open up, that can happen, but I'm not entirely sure if when they're alone at home, how successful that well-being component will be and how well they'll feel about themselves, learning just individually and by themselves.
Thank you, Janvi, for answering that question. The next question is from Ms. Suganya. The question is this lockdown or pause really an opportunity to push learning, given the child is also processing what's happening and dealing with the uncertainties itself? How can we balance giving that flexibility to the child to really manage their time or boredom and adapt to, a highly uncertain situation itself? And how could they engage their time better?
Yeah, and this is so this is a very important question, because I do think that this big fear that we have, कि बच्चे पीछे रह जाएंगे, come on, they should spend all their time studying, is it's not possible. We're going through a crisis, and it's not just we who are going through the crisis, so are they. They're not seeing their friends, they're not seeing life like normal, and it is worrying and it is scary. So I do think that we need to balance how much we're expecting them to study and learn, and what they can do in their free time to also just feel whatever emotions that they are feeling. One of the things that we're trying to do is also just recommend normal things, fun things to do at home. And we're trying to engage and add more of the social emotional learning component and well-being component into the projects as well, because it's important that they balance their time between learning and feeling like everything is normal, and also just feeling out what they feel. So what I mean by that is one of our projects, for example, is a newspaper project where they are supposed to report on how everyone in their family is feeling about COVID, because it's important to acknowledge it. One, in the same newspaper project, they are also meant to spend a little bit of time thinking about a comic strip or thinking about fun things that they can do from home when they're stuck at home. Or for example, another project of ours is actually about COVID, where at the end of the project, they're supposed to design house rules for the entire family. But through this process, actually really understand what are the rules and why are they there. So we're actually trying to address the fact that we're not in usual times. So let's not expect that from our children as well. And let's balance it. So today what we see is that many schools have shifted to maybe 3-4 hours of schooling. And then a lot of other schools have sort of moved and tried to do the full 7 or 8 hours of schooling. But really, on average, I mean, based on a Brookings study that came out a few days ago, which is, of course, an updated study, it's a rolling study, it's being updated every day. Most students are spending 3-4 hours a day on learning, even in best case scenarios, which we're saying is probably all they can do in these situations. And that's the balance which makes sense. But really, these inequalities are very, very severe between the haves and the have-nots, and those who have access to it and don't.
Great. Thank you, Suganya, for asking that question. Janvi, one of the last questions that we have right now is from Charul. She works at Mantra itself. Her question is that given in India, there is already a great deal of difference in students' learning outcome from different socioeconomic backgrounds, do you think this pandemic is going to increase this gap? How can we as educators make sure that it is not the case in the future?
It will. I wish I had a better answer, but it will increase the gap. The question is just, one, what do we do today to reduce the difference? So how do we at least try and make sure we reach out to those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds so that the gap is not bigger than what it needs to be? And the second is, when they come back, what do we do to get them caught up? And what do we focus on? Because the reality is we always have a time issue and a resource issue. So when they come back, if we're trying to catch them up on everything, we are just not going to be able to. But if we just catch them up on the core skills and then let them gradually catch up on the knowledge, I think that's basically going to be the only strategy with which we can try and reduce this gap as much as possible and give them the best shot that they have at this.
Thank you, Janvi, for answering that question. And I think with that, we are at the end of our webinar. That's all the time we have today. And I would like to thank each one of you participants for joining us today and engaging with Janvi. I'm sure that we all have a lot to take back from this interaction today. To reiterate, you will all soon receive an email with the recording of the webinar, Janvi's contact if you wish to get in touch with her a little later, and a few resources that Janvi has curated for us, which she also touched upon a little during this webinar. Janvi, on behalf of all of us, I would like to thank you for your time and your investment in making this such a vibrant discussion. We couldn't have started our Inspire webinar series on a better note, one which is relevant to our times and which truly inspires us to innovate in education. I would like to ask you if you have any closing notes at this point of time to share with the rest of the group.
I just wanted to say a big thank you. And when I was seeing the list of participants, I know a lot of people in this list are working on the ground, on the field, in schools, in NGOs, and a big heartfelt thank you to all of you, because आप लोग actually रोज innovate कर रहे हैं. And इसी कारण से आज वो gap बच्चों के बीच में narrow हो रहा है and kids are learning. So I just really hope that you continue to do that really good work and then share it with people like me so we can share it with everybody else so that more and more people get inspired from your stories. And I really hope you leave here feeling like it is possible. We can reach all of these learners and we just have to keep trying to be creative and trying new ways to do that. And thank you all for listening and giving me this opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. And we at Mantra would also be very privileged to receive some of your case studies or your experiences in dealing with this particular situation. Please do share them with us as well. And we could definitely take some conversations forward. We'd be more than glad to do so. On that note, thank you once again, Janvi, and all of our participants for joining us today. I wish you all a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you. Good evening.
Bye-bye.